Good afternoon, and welcome to the Tuesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and we'll be joined by our attorney, Robert Black, for the Q&A after the presentation. Well, today is March 7th, 2017. We still find ourselves in pre-RV purgatory, which means that until the revaluation of these currencies occurs, we're just going to have to remain vigilant, continue to pay attention to the information as it's released, and do everything we can to make sure that our affairs are in order to the extent that we can prior to the revaluation of these currencies. For those of you that are new to our calls, we have a pretty standard format. We spend just a few minutes talking about the revaluation as we see it. Then we'll spend a few minutes talking about the program that we've put in place to assist those of you that hold currencies, and then we go to the Q&A. So let's go ahead and start with the revaluation of these currencies. As I suspected, the closer we get to the eventual revaluation of these currencies, there's a whole lot going on. There's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of back-channel communications. There are a lot of seemingly unrelated activities that are all leading, hopefully, to the conclusion that these currencies, and I'm referring to the Iraqi dinar and some of the other neighboring currencies, to eventually revalue, and that, of course, would be the catalyst for the general global reset and the transition to a commodity-based global currency structure. So let's talk about what's going on in Iraq today. Those of you that have been calling in fairly even recently, but certainly those of you that have been listening for some time know that I was cautiously optimistic for the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar in the first quarter of 2017. You also know that once we get near the end of a quarter, I do not want to see a revaluation until the beginning of the next quarter. That has to do with tax concerns, and it also has to do with not having to prematurely exchange currencies in order to pay a tax, but to be able to hold on for the currencies for weeks and perhaps even a few months on the theory that if the currencies come back at an artificially low float, we need that time for those currencies to appreciate. Now, my position or my view, my opinion now is I do not see how these currencies can revalue in the first quarter. And inasmuch as we're basically a week from the Ides of March, I don't want to see it in this late in the first quarter. A number of things have to occur, and I just don't see this is all taking place. We need to see the announcement, a formal announcement for the liberation of Mosul, which we might not see for a few weeks, and by extension, Raqqa, which is in Syria just across the border. We're also going to need to see the final adjustments to both the National Reconciliation Law and the Hydrocarbon Law. There is some tweaking that needs to be done, and there will also need to be one final National Reconciliation Conference. Now, the announcement of Mosul, the liberation of Mosul, hopefully can come within the next, certainly, week or so, if not the next couple of days. But again, that in and of itself isn't going to be sufficient for an immediate revaluation. Now, there are coalition forces that are actually now fighting ISIS in Raqqa. So essentially what's happened is most of Mosul has been captured. The 26 villages surrounding Mosul have been under control. The airport has been captured and is now basically a military station for the Iraqi army. They have cut off supplies to Syria. Baghdadi and other leaders of ISIS have basically said cut and run. They're heading back into Syria, and the coalition forces are basically trying to pick them off on their way outside of the country. So that's all good news, but from the standpoint of the revaluation of these currencies, that's going to take a little bit of time. Now, I have been asked from time to time what I really think about the revaluation of these currencies and whether or not I think that they're a good investment. The way I've always explained it is that holders of the Iraqi dinar aren't betting on the Iraqi dinar revaluing per se. What they're really betting on is that the nation state of Iraq will once again reemerge as a non-sectarian, functioning sovereign nation and will not become a failed state to be chopped up similar to what happened to Yugoslavia. And I used as examples of that all of the things that the international community has been doing to assist Iraq to get back on its feet. I'll just mention a couple from a financial point of view. We recently had Kuwaiti forgive $100 million of the reparations coming from Iraq to Kuwait in order to reestablish human services in Mosul. The United Kingdom has just approved a $10 billion British pound, which is roughly 12.5 US dollar loan for infrastructure. Part and parcel of that, of course, is that the companies that will receive contracts for that infrastructure to a certain percentage, of course, will be British companies, and that's, of course, fine. But once again, the point is that a nation would not be lending $10 billion to a country that they thought was going to result in being a failed state. The IMF, of course, did approve an $18 billion loan, that's in euros, to be paid out in 3 tranches. Much of this payment will be used to finally pay off the approximate $9 billion in reparations that Kuwait still owes, that Iraq still owes Kuwait. Now, the accomplishment of that basically pushes Iraq to Article 8, full membership with the IMF/World Bank, and possibly even Article 15, meaning they'd be eligible for special drawing rights and further loans as well. Internally, in terms of the currency reforms, we see that the IQD continues to increase incrementally against the dollar. As you know, the U.S. dollar was used as an incentive in country in Iraq to collect the provisional currency, the 3-0 currency. Now the incremental increase of the new dinar is being used to now subsequently collect the U.S. dollars, so that when they do revalue in country, Iraqi citizens will be using the new IQD, and to the extent that any of them still retain any of the old provisional 3-0 currency, it will be treated non-denominationally as though the 3 zeros don't even exist. Now that, of course, will not apply to foreign investors like ourselves, but it will apply to Iraqi nationals in country. The last thing I will mention is, and this is, in my opinion, important, we recently learned that al-Maliki, and those of us who have currencies are well aware of who Maliki is, claims that he is now in very poor health and that he cannot sustain his rigorous schedule politically. He is now turning over his list of electors from the Dawa party to Abadi. Now, from my standpoint, it's entirely possible that he has health issues. Given the situation that exists today in Iraq and his situation, I'm quite sure would affect anyone's health. However, it's more than likely that the man has finally realized that his intentions politically, economically, and in terms of his corrupt cohorts has simply failed. Iran has refused to take him in for sanctuary. The international courts would be interested in him if he were to leave Iraq. So, of all his options, it seems as though he's been left with the option of turning everything over amicably with the hope that he will be treated with some leniency. But that's an important issue because we now finally know that he and certain members of the Dawa party are no longer in a position to create problems. I guess the argument could be made that today as we speak, the Iraqi government works better than our own government. Now, the final transition from a government-centered Iraq to a modern 21st century private sector economy can only be accomplished with the revaluation of their currency. They need the revaluation of their currency. They need activity within their country. They need to be able to create something called capital formation, which allows for the private sector to grow, for there to be the establishment of new businesses, to hire people that are being laid off from government positions, and then ultimately to be able to be good trading partners internationally with their neighbors and around the world. We know that per square mile, Iraq may be the richest country in the world, given their known natural resources, both in terms of petroleum, gold, silver, platinum, uranium, and all of the other vital raw materials necessary for modern society and for consumption. So phase 3 phase 1, of course, is the production. Phase 2 would be the distribution. Phase 3 would be the consumption of products. And that simply cannot be accomplished until they have a private sector economy. And once again, that cannot be accomplished until they get the revaluation of their currency. So having said all of that, I don't see how they can go beyond the second quarter without a revaluation. I was hopeful that this would get done in the first quarter, but as I said, with Iraq, everything is moving in the right direction, but it always seems to be moving a little more slowly than we would like. There is no bad news other than the fact that this is probably going to take a little longer. Now, even if the revaluation were to occur in the first quarter, once again, and then I'll move on, my concern is that the revaluation of the currency very late in the quarter creates a lot of problems for us. We have a tax that would be due immediately, and we don't know exactly what that tax is. That would require the payment of an ordinary income tax and filing for a refund with the hope that it's a capital gain tax or an international contract tax or some other mechanism of that nature. If the currency comes in at an artificial float, we'd be forced to exchange a portion of the currency to pay a tax, only to find out that the tax might be less, and to realize that we exchanged currency at, say, $1.25 that might be worth 2 or 3 times that if we had the luxury of being able to hold on to the currency. So a revaluation, for example, in the month of April would give us it would give us 75 days until taxes would be due. It would give us probably 65 days before we'd be forced to do an exchange. So we're just going to take this as it comes to us and do the best we can to try to ascertain how to deal with that. Now, the one thing we can control is whether or not we've gotten our affairs in order prior to the revaluation. In that area, Trust Unlimited has put into place a turnkey program to assist you. It's a 2-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV, Phase 1 involves the establishment of a package of pre-RV asset protection trusts. Phase 2 involves all of the product, services, and professional referrals that will become necessary after the revaluation of these currencies. So let's start with Phase 1, pre-RV, the establishment of your pre-RV asset protection trust and the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Very simply, a trust is a legal instrument one can establish to hold, manage, and to protect assets. Trusts can fall into some basic categories. For example, a trust can either be revocable or it can be irrevocable. In order to have the asset protection you're going to need and want, you're going to need to establish a package of irrevocable trusts, and that package must be established prior to the revaluation of these currencies. These are the reasons why. First, by establishing your pre-RV trust package, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That's because assets held within an irrevocable trust are sealed, and the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing your package of pre-RV trusts and assigning your currencies on paper to those trusts, you will also be transferring the taxable event of the revaluation to your trust rather than to yourself personally. If you're holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will automatically spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. That's going to be time-consuming, it's going to be frustrating, and it's probably going to cost you more than the cost of an asset protection trust. But you can avoid personal IRS scrutiny by transferring the currencies to your trust pre-RV. If your currencies are held in trust when the revaluation occurs, there's less than a 10% chance of an audit. And even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit of an entity that only has one taxable event, the revaluation of that currency or currencies. The third reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV trust package is if you plan on doing gifting of currencies to family and friends in certain situations. Philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV, but in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to gift currencies prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting currencies to individuals that you have no problem giving them the lump sum, you can either give them the currencies outright and allow them to exchange the currencies, or give them the lump sum after you do the exchange, and this can be done outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you're gifting to individuals that you don't want to give them the lump sum for whatever reason, then you can gift to them through your trust. By gifting through your pre-RV trust, you'll avoid the 40% federal gift tax. The language of the trust allows you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you can gift the exact dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. And because you're gifting through the trust, you'll have complete control of the post-RV proceeds, which you can then distribute as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV trust package is because it's structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you 2 quick scenarios. Scenario number 1, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years and even decades. And then there's the federal estate tax, the tax that the federal government will assess in order for you to transfer that estate to heirs. Under current law, the first $5 million of that estate would bypass any federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. Scenario number 2, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to your asset protection trust. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million in our asset protection trust. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be 0, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this package of pre-RV asset protection trusts is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust product. So let's use the example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer those currencies to our trust. Those currencies subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years later, someone sees that you're living rather large, decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has two problems. First, he better have a very substantial case, because this trust is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil proceeding. And second, once this prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be the pre-RV value of $5,000 and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop loss. This is accomplished through a strategy called segregation of assets. This is why you would establish a package of trusts, and this is how it would work. Again, we'll use the same example. You purchase the dinar, place them in trust. The currencies revalue for $25 million. Now you have $25 million in trust, and you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and maybe an RV. And as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate, segregated subtrust to be managed by your master trust. Now, why is this important? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car. And who owns the car that you were driving? One of your subtrusts of which you are the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the plaintiffs. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole, and all of your other assets are safely protected in other sub-trusts. And this is exactly the scenario that would ensue if you or any of your other assets ever got involved in a civil proceeding. So by way of a metaphor, your package of trusts work very much the way a barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits, once again, are lost to you if you do not establish your trust package prior to the revaluation of these currencies. Now, there's one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, the holder of one of our asset protection trust packages, you will be eligible and able to participate in all of our post-RV product services and professional referrals. I'll give you just one example. We will be holding a post-RV seminar approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. It will be held in Disney World, Orlando, Florida. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust post-RV. We will also have our tax specialists there. Our offshore specialists will show you that by establishing offshore title of certain assets, you can substantially reduce and even eliminate future taxes on the reinvestment of the proceeds from the revaluation of these currencies. We'll also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. It's going to be critical that you reposition assets as quickly as possible after the revaluation of these currencies for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to a lack of experience, management, and unfortunately pilfering and fraud from supposed friends and family. We also know that the new G20 bank bail-in provisions are in place, meaning that if there should be a bank failure, the federal governments of these nations, rather than making that bank whole through their general taxing authority, will go first and foremost to confiscate funds from the account holders at those banks. So as a general rule, you don't want to have all of your eggs in one basket anyway, but you definitely don't want to have your money in the bank under these new bank bail-in provisions. And third, the revaluation of these currencies, as I've said earlier, will be the catalyst for the global reset. The global reset is the shift globally from a fiat-based to commodity-based currencies. And that shift in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile markets, and you want to get your money out of financial assets and into tangibles in some nature, some fashion. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of 1 master trust, 1 optional gift subtrust, and 8 blank subtrusts. This was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a trust package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to assist Denarians a few years ago, we knew that that price tag was simply going to be unaffordable for most Denarians. So we basically simplified and back-end loaded PostRV, this trust product. By doing so, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. In addition, there are a number of ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we even have a deferred payment plan. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which would basically defray our out-of-pocket cost just to produce and deliver your trust. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. If you pay us with a credit card up front, you'll get the $500 discount, and the minimum payment on your credit card would be less than the $100 a month that you'd pay under our deferred payment plan. But we will work with you in whatever program works best for you. Our objective is to get your trust in place, your currencies assigned to that trust prior to the revaluation of these currencies for all of the reasons that I've just stated. Now, I'm going to go to the Q&A in just a moment, but before I do, and for the benefit of our newer callers, I want to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you may want to seriously consider allowing us to assist you. Our trust product was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for 37 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the revaluation of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have 77 years' experience working precisely in this area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning, and it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. In point of fact, it's just the reverse. It's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them, and invariably it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death, and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is now identity theft. But the number 1 loss of wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you're holding an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trust Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV as we understand them. I'd like to thank you for listening to the call. We're going to go to the Q&A in just a moment. Again, for newer callers, you can contact us. I will be providing you with our contact information in just a moment. We'll be happy to send you our initial package. There's absolutely no obligation on your part to receive our initial package. It has a lot of valuable information about the RV, about Trusts Unlimited. You can review the information. You can call us back and ask for questions and clarification. There's no consultation fee at all. We'll assist you in every way that we possibly can. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the Q&A. When I open the Q&A, if you'd like to ask a question, just dial *6. And when I call your area code out, if you'd just be kind enough to give us your first name and where you're calling from, we'll be happy to entertain your question. 2 quick rules on the Q&A. First, we take no service calls. Existing clients can contact us by phone, by fax, or by email. We'll be glad to assist you if you have a service question. Second, we have a number of people on our calls under anonymous. We have no problem providing this information to anyone that wants to listen, but in order to participate in the Q&A, your name and number must be on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, let me give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to iqdcalls.com, go to Trusts Unlimited and follow the prompts, or you can dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon, with the exception of the last 2 digits. Rather than dialing 40, you'll dial 39, and you'll use the same access code, which is 739394#. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated, and you will be on our email list within 24 hours. Now, we only send emails out occasionally pre-RV. However, after the revaluation of these currencies, emails may go out as often as every day, certainly during that first 30-day period. So if you want to participate and receive this valuable information, I suggest you get on our email list. Okay, we have a caller in the queue. This is area code 312. That's 312. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. Good afternoon. How are you this happy Tuesday?
Pretty good. Les, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Les in Chicago. Wanted to ask you if you've seen that news article Saturday or Sunday regarding the Iranian government authorizing U.S. citizens to have bank accounts in Iran.
Yes. There's a. By the way, that, in my opinion, is part and parcel of an ancillary agreement that the Obama administration struck with Iran. Remember, the philosophy there is if we just play nice with them, if we release the sanctions, if we give them their money back, if we pay for hostages, if we let them do contracts with American contractors, if we release the funds that we've frozen, if we do all of this, they're going to play nice, which is, of course, is an absurdity as far as I'm concerned. But The issue that concerns me with Iran is we still have some of their Revolutionary Guard running around in Iraq, and that's one of the security issues that Iraq's got to clean up. My understanding is that there is going to be a meeting with the IMF and the CBI this week to deal with the letter of intent, checking all the boxes for the revaluation of the currency. And in that letter of intent were two things. Number one, they had to assure that they were not going to be involved in the internal affairs of other nations. And number two, that other nations that were involved in their nation had to be expelled. And that means the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So, yeah, I did see that. I'm not surprised by that. I don't think that has any effect whatsoever on the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. And I've said this before. This is only my opinion. I don't think any of this is going to speed up the revaluation of the Iranian rial, because one of the requirements to be Article 8 member of the IMF/World Bank is that there has to be an agreement that you will not be involved in the internal affairs of neighboring countries. And, of course, Iran's involved in everybody's affairs. So we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think that, thanks for all that intel, but I think that because they have already been informed as to what they can and cannot do if they want to participate in the RV, I think they're already actively doing that.
That may be the case, but the mullahs of Iran, their signature on agreement, as far as I'm concerned, based on their track record, means absolutely nothing, less than nothing, if that's possible.
Yeah, I know how you feel about it.
I mean, I could be wrong. I just don't see how the Iran can be rewarded for the way they've behaved. But we'll just see how it plays out.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for taking my call.
Okay. Take care. Our next caller is area code 931. That's 931. Go ahead.
Yes, Jim. Good afternoon. This is Manny.
Yes.
I have a couple questions, and see if we can help me answer these. Number one, is Iraq, have they sold these bonds already? I understand they sold a couple to England and maybe one other nation. And if they have, do you feel like those bonds have to have a rate in them before they could be traded, if you will? And are they just trying to hide the rate that's on those bonds country to country?
I got to be honest with you, that's a question I cannot answer, but I'm writing that down right now because I've got a few people I can call that might be able to give me some clarification on that. But anything that I would say would be pure speculation on that particular issue.
Okay, that would be good if we could find that out, because there's a lot of chatter that they have revalued in a sense that on these bonds the rate is on there, because you can't be selling bonds or if you don't have a rate, because nobody's going to buy them.
There could be a forward contract where they're saying that on a stipulated date there'll be a revaluation and it'll be in certain parameters. And of course, people that would purchase a bond in this situation are speculating anyway. So I know who I can call. I don't know that I can get the answer, but if you'll hold on a second, let me write down your number. I have it somewhere, but I like to write it down when I have it right in front of me, save me some time. I'll see what I can find out, and if I find out anything that I think makes sense, I'll give you a call and let you know.
Okay. And speaking of that, I had a call pending out to you last Friday or Thursday, and I was waiting on that call. I had some questions about the trust itself, but just give me a call when you get a moment there, or I can call you either way.
I'll give you a call this afternoon.
Okay. And the other thing is another announcement that I've heard some chatter that Iraq has announced that they're on the petrodollar, and if that's the case, that means that they can hold off on the revaluation if need be.
Well, no, now there's a little confusion there. They're using the U.S. dollar as their reserve currency in country. They need a currency that have a value to exchange for goods and services. The petrodollar is a different issue. What the petrodollar means is when people make international purchases of petroleum, it's got to be done using the dollar. Now, as part and parcel of the liberation agreement for Iraq, their petroleum had to be sold with the U.S. dollar, which means if Russia or China or some other country wants to purchase their petroleum, they're going to have to exchange to the U.S. dollar and purchase the petroleum with the U.S. dollar. Now, that props up the U.S. dollar. It's the analogy I can make is when you go to the bank to do your exchange, the bank makes up to 2% on the transaction by exchanging the currency. Well, the U.S. Treasury will pick up a percentage because Russia or China or whomever is going to have to convert to the U.S. dollar to then purchase the Iraqi petroleum. So that's the deal there. But whenever you hear petrodollar, that has to do with the purchase of a commodity as opposed to using the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency or as one of the reserve currencies within the IMF.
So do we have any information on when we go Basel III compliant, do we have any information that all their products and services other than oil, if that be the case, is going to be on the petrodollar, or is that just related to oil?
No. Basel III has to do with determining the value of a currency globally. Up to this point, or at least probably since maybe the mid-'70s, basically countries have been manipulating their currency against each other. And one of the reasons you artificially devalue your currency the way China has, you hear Trump talk about it all the time. The reason they artificially devalue the currency is because their products are much more attractive price-wise globally. So they do it in order to sell their products. What Basel III compliance does, aside from stabilizing and having a unified method, is that the currencies will be backed by some tangible asset as opposed to some arbitrary. When we say fiat, basically their currency is based on the full faith and credit of the government. Well, that could mean nothing. So that's what's happening there. That's what Basel III compliance is. Now, the other issue is this. The United States holds a substantial amount of Iraqi dinar. Iraqi dinar will be Basel III compliant because, as I've said, per square mile, Iraq might be the richest country in the world. So that means that because we hold the currency, we indirectly hold the asset that backs that currency. So that assists us with our new currency to be Basel III compliant because of the holdings of the Treasury Department, i.e., tangible assets themselves or currencies that are Basel III compliant.
So I guess maybe asking the question again, the oil is related to the petrodollar, and commodities, their commodities is not related to the petrodollar. In other words, if we buy gold from them, they're not going to have to convert any money, whether it be Russia or China or anything, to buy their gold in petrodollars, because oil and gold is a commodity.
Yes, but the term petrodollar has a very specific meaning. It means that the contract for the purchase of petroleum must be done using the U.S. dollar. That's all that term means.
I see. Okay, so it doesn't relate to any other commodity other than just the oil part of it.
No, it means that if one country has a contract to purchase petroleum from another country, that petroleum must be purchased with the U.S. dollar.
Okay, so they can buy Iraqi gold if that's the case, if and when we have a revaluation. They can pay it in Vietnam dong or Russian currency or whatever on other commodities.
If they're willing to accept that, that's entirely different. I'm just saying the petrodollar is not related to any of that. Those are all separate transactions.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Jim. I'll be looking for your call then.
Okay. Take care, Manny. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, we do have one other caller here, but it's under anonymous. And as I've said, we don't take anonymous calls on Q&A. And the reason I don't do, I'll be honest with you, we did have an individual call who decided that he was the smartest guy in the room. And to be honest with you, he didn't know what the hell he was talking about. So I'm not going to waste my time and yours. I don't know who this individual is. I'm not casting aspersions, but we have a simple rule. In order to participate in the Q&A, your name and number must be on the screen. So we have no further calls today. Again, I'd like to thank you for listening to the call. If you'd like to get our package, we'll be happy to send it to you. You can contact us in any of the methods that I prescribed. Again, you're under absolutely no obligation from getting the package. You can review it. Contact us if you have any questions. There's no consultation fee. We'll be glad to assist you in every way that we can. Our next call is Thursday afternoon, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific. Bye-bye, everyone.